This video has been sponsored by Squarespace. Despite how well Tolkien explained so many things in Middle-earth, you can't deny that he loved an unanswerable question. And perhaps one of the most mysterious is, what happened to the Entwives? And at first, this might seem like a pretty small question. The Entwives are, after all, just one branch from a race that is already on its decline during the events of The Lord of the Rings. They are completely forgotten from common thought. But hidden under this question is a very interesting thing, an incredibly rare example of an imperfect romantic relationship in Middle-earth. The Ents and the Entwives are proof of just how good Tolkien was at taking even the smallest piece of this story and infusing it with rich meaning, both within the context of Middle-earth and by filtering the real world into fantasy. But I know one thing that is not fantasy, and that is the amazing website that you're going to be able to make using this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website building platform that's going to help you stand out and succeed online. With Squarespace's cutting-edge design tools, anyone at any experience level can build themselves a perfectly customized website. You can start with one of their professionally designed website templates or with their website builder, and use their intuitive drag-and-drop technology to build a website that beautifully matches your brand and style. You can run email campaigns, you can collect donations, you can even monetize the things that you make, and you can keep track of how all of this is doing using Squarespace's built-in analytics tools. These intuitive tools allow you to track your website traffic, figure out where to focus your engagement, and track your revenue all in one place. If you're interested in overhauling an existing brand or building yourself an entirely new one, Squarespace is the place to do it. Just head down to squarespace.com for a completely free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/JessOfTheShire to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thanks to all of you for checking out my sponsors. Part of what makes the mystery of the Entwives so mysterious is the fact that we never actually get to meet them. By the time that Merry and Pippin stumble into Fangorn Forest and meet Treebeard, the Entwives are long gone, meaning that the only way we encounter them is through other people's words. This provides us with a unique opportunity to look past the story that Tolkien tells and into the way that that story is told. For example, despite how loquacious and talkative Treebeard is with the hobbits, telling them about who he is, how his language works, what's been happening to Entkind, it takes him pages to even mention the Entwives. And even when the Entwives are brought up, it's in an offhanded remark. The hobbits are describing the pastoral, domestic tranquility of the Shire, and Treebeard asks them if they've ever seen an Entwife there. When pressed for details, Treebeard has none. He can't even describe the Entwives to the hobbits. But the one thing that Treebeard does remember about them is that they would have liked the Shire. It's striking that this is the detail that Treebeard recalls about them, and that this is the detail that first brought the Entwives to mind, because it was the Entwives' desire and love for ordered, cultivated land that first divided the Ent race in the first place. Treebeard explains that once upon a time they all lived together in harmony, Ents falling in love with Ent maidens and having little Ent children, but that peace could not last forever. Our hearts did not go on growing in the same way. The Ents gave their love to things that they met in the world, and the Entwives gave their thought to other things. For the Ents loved the great trees and the wild woods, and the slopes of the high hills. And they drank of the mountain streams, and ate only such fruit as the trees let fall in their path, and they learned of the elves and spoke with the trees. But the Entwives gave their minds to the lesser trees, and to the meads in the sunshine beyond the feet of the forest. They saw the sloe in the thicket, and the wild apple, and the cherry blossoming in spring, and the green herbs in the waterlands in summer, and the seeding grasses in the autumn fields. They did not desire to speak with these things, but they wished them to hear and obey what was said to them. The Entwives ordered them to grow according to their wishes, and bear leaf and fruit to their liking, for the Entwives desired order and plenty and peace, by which they meant that things should remain where they had set them. So it is that the Entwives stayed put in their gardens, while the Ents wandered off into the wilderlands, and eventually their differing desires and interests pulled them apart until they could not find each other any longer. And I feel that this sundering, this separation based on their differing interests and desires, is partially inspired by their creation story. According to the Silmarillion, Ents were created just after Aule, the smithing Valar, created the dwarves. Aule's wife, Yavanna, the steward of all growing things, worried that the dwarves might destroy nature to fuel their forges, and she begged that Iluvatar might grant her some guardians for the forest. Thus the Ents awoke, their very being born out of two spouses with utterly different goals and desires, unable or unwilling to compromise. This seems to have been passed down to the Ents, their pride getting in the way of love, but not making that love any less true or any less lasting. Even though the Entwives are, according to Tolkien, almost certainly dead as of the Second Age, Treebeard cannot accept this. You see, we lost the Entwives. How very sad, said Pippin. How was it that they all died? They did not die, said Treebeard. I never said died. We lost them, I said. We lost them, and we cannot find them, he sighed. I thought most folk knew that. There is a profound tragedy here. Treebeard's understanding of life, of the world, and of time is so utterly alien, so completely different to the conception that a human has of those things, that he's unable to accept that death could even be an option for the Entwives. And while death is tragic, it's possible that this state that he's put himself into, this state of perpetual unknowing, it might be even more painful. After all, there is a certainty that comes with death. You at least know where they are, but Treebeard is still allowing himself to hope that one day they may be reunited, even if that is truly impossible. Another aspect of this tragedy is the fact that people are forgetting. Nobody knows the songs that speak of the Entwives anymore. Once upon a time, the tale of the Ents and their lost wives was the fare of songs and stories. It was common knowledge. The tragedy is not merely in that the Entwives are gone, but also that their very memory is beginning to fade from the world. They're a part of a story, an old story, that no longer has a place in the new world. With both the Ents and the Entwives drifting out of space and time, it would seem that any hope for reconciliation or reunion is completely futile. But that doesn't mean that that hope is dead. Merely centuries back, the Ents went striding across the Anduin in search for them, and even when they found their once rich and growing lands desolate, left a complete desert by Sauron, they kept searching, they asked around, they called endlessly for their missing wives. The reason that Treebeard brings up the Entwives is to ask if Merry and Pippin have seen them. When he declares that the attack on Isengard may well be the last march of the Ents, Treebeard reminisces, "Still, I should have liked to see the songs come true about the Entwives. I should have dearly liked to see Fimbrethiel again. But there, my friends, songs like trees bear fruit only in their own time and their own way, and sometimes they are withered untimely." And yet, despite all this sorrow and all of this longing, the Ents have not let go of the pride that caused this rift in the first place. They may go out looking for the Entwives on occasion, but they always come back to their open forests. They still think that their way is right. And beyond just the events of the story, the language that Treebeard uses is very telling. When he uses pronouns like we, us, or our, he is almost always referring to male Ents, excluding Entwives as part of this collective personal pronoun. The only time that he refers to all of Entkind, both male and female, as a collective is when he says that our hearts did not go on growing the same way. It's almost as if he can only accept that they are united in that they have drifted apart. They are both responsible for what has happened to them. Treebeard tells the hobbits about a song that the elves have written that captures this conflict with perhaps more objectivity than the Ents would be capable of. The first verse goes, "When spring unfolds the beechen leaf, and sap is in the bough, when light is on the wildwood stream, and wind is on the brow, when stride is long and breath is deep, and keen the mountain air, come back to me, and say my land is fair. When spring is come to garth and field, and corn is in the blade, when blossom like a shining snow is on the orchard laid, when shower and sun upon the earth with fragrance fill the air, I'll linger here and will not come, because my land is fair." As spring blooms all around them, the Ents and the Entwives both revel in their similar but different interests. They are breathing in the same air, rejoicing in the same spring warmth, but both of them refuse to compromise or to leave their land, insisting that their land is most fair. In the second verse, as the richness of summer settles in, they continue this back and forth banter throughout this song, the Ents calling to the Entwives to join them in the cool shade of the rich forest, the Entwives calling the Ents to join them in the warmth of the sun, both of them declaring that their land is best. But when summer fades to the brutal cold of winter, their tune changes. With the trees falling and the skies darkening, they finally reach out to each other, saying, "Together we will take the road that leads into the west, and far away we'll find a land where both our hearts may rest." In this song, the elves lay out this argument between the Ents and the Entwives perfectly. They're both so in love with their land and the ways that they tend to it, they simply cannot see how the other side could be right. And it's beautiful, but also quite sad, that even in this song, the best compromise that they could possibly find is to both leave behind everything that they love and go down the road seeking something better, a land that could please the both of them. Because a place like that, it seems impossible. Is that a place they could ever really reach? We're left not knowing. There is a terrible bittersweetness to the idea that the closest thing to reconciliation that the Ents could find is being together, hand in hand, but going down the road into the unknown. There are so many picturesque romances in The Lord of the Rings. Beren and Luthien dancing in the forest, the immortal love of Aragorn and Arwen, the healing journey of Éowyn and Faramir, the simple joy of Rosie and Sam. But the Ents and the Entwives present a very different facet of romance. What if the hopes and dreams and goals of a couple do not align and never do? While I do think it would be foolish to call Tolkien's works allegorical, you can't deny that his works were informed, or at least shaped, by his own life and his own experiences. He did call his own beloved wife Luthien, who is a character in his stories, but their relationship was definitely not word for word Beren and Luthien's relationship. That would be far too simple. Rather, I think that here Tolkien uses a tool that he uses often in The Lord of the Rings, which is to use a pair of characters or storylines to better illustrate the fullness of the human experience. Much like we can see the spider monster Shelob and the goddess of light Galadriel as two separate sides of the coin of feminine power, So I think that the tale of the Ents and the Entwives can be compared to other romances in Tolkien's Legendarium to paint a much fuller picture of the real experience of love and romance and relationships. Tolkien's relationship with Edith, with the other women in his life, and frankly with the idea of women on the whole, is a very complex, nuanced, and impossible to fully understand thing. And part of this is the fact that Tolkien was just a very private person, relatively speaking. I mean, he didn't think that biographical information about his life should be used to inform or rewrite his stories. But the main thing is this. Tolkien was human. He was an imperfect human being. His relationships were complex and multifaceted and unfair and nuanced in ways that nobody except Tolkien himself could really understand. And that's fine, that's how all humans are, but the problem is that a lot of people have tried to go in and analyze certain aspects of Tolkien's life and analyze the things that he said and the things that he believed, but by working off of so little information, they end up making claims that are at the very best misguided, and at the very worst, sometimes outright wrong. Humphrey Carpenter's official biography of Tolkien is the prime example of this. While this is an excellent resource on Tolkien's life, there are a lot of things that Carpenter gets wrong. Well, not wrong outright, but definitely under-nuanced. In one chapter that I find absolutely heartbreaking, Carpenter goes in depth on Edith and Tolkien's relationship as married adults. Carpenter says that now that the whirlwind romance of their early relationship had settled down, Edith found herself quite out of place. She was quiet and shy, and although Tolkien's career was taking off and he had a very full social life, she was kind of left behind. They shared a family and a home, and they cared for each other deeply, but at least according to this biography, Edith felt that there was a part of Tolkien's life, and a part of Tolkien's self, that he never really allowed her into. Carpenter writes, Tolkien did not encourage her to pursue any intellectual activity, partly because he did not consider it to be a necessary part of her role as wife and mother, and partly because his attitude to her in courtship, exemplified by his favorite term for her, little one, was not associated with his own intellectual life. Edith began to feel she was being ignored by Tolkien. In terms of actual hours, he was certainly in the house a great deal, but it was really a matter of his affections. He was very loving and considerate to her, greatly concerned about her health as she was about his, and solicitous about domestic matters, but she could see that one side of him only came alive when he was in the company of men of his own kind. Indeed, he perceived that his need of male friendship was not entirely compatible with married life. Now, based off of the passages that I just read there, you may have formed a certain opinion about Tolkien, about what he thought, and how he viewed relationships. But the problem is that because Tolkien wrote relatively little about his own perspectives on these matters, in order to fill in the blanks, Carpenter pulls not from Tolkien's own thoughts, but he pulls pretty heavily from C.S. Lewis's thoughts on women and on marital relationships. He literally starts this chapter out with a passage from C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. And while there were a lot of things that Tolkien and Lewis agreed about, married life was not necessarily one of them, meaning that Carpenter's read on Tolkien's relationship, at least in my opinion and based on my research, isn't quite accurate to what Tolkien actually believed. Now, that is not to say that Edith and Tolkien's relationship was not fraught, that it didn't have its own fair share of problems, but based on the actual information that we have about Tolkien, he was far more supportive of women in active and academic roles than a lot of his peers at the time. His first and most beloved teacher was, after all, his own mother, who he revered almost as a saint throughout the rest of his life. He spoke very proudly of his aunt, Jane Suffield, who was the very first academic in Tolkien's family. He had a fairly close working relationship and friendship with the academic Elizabeth Mary Wright. They originally met through her husband, Tolkien's tutor Joseph Wright, but after Wright had died, Tolkien maintained a relationship with Elizabeth Mary Wright well into his adult life. When he first started out tutoring in Oxford, Tolkien was notable because he had a lot of female students that he taught. And this was in part because Tolkien was a rare example of a married professor, meaning that he could be in the room with female students without needing a chaperone. But even after the chaperone rules were lifted, and after Tolkien was much more successful, meaning that he didn't just have to take on anyone who came to him, he continued tutoring and paying a lot of academic attention to young women in a way that many of his ilk did not. If you want to hear more about this, you should check out this essay by John Rateliff, because it goes through all of this in very great depth, and I will be talking more about this specific subject in a dedicated video. But it's safe to say that Tolkien did not have any problems treating the thoughts and desires of women as reasonable, as respectable. As we can see in the underlayers of the Tales of the Entwives, Tolkien considers a woman's interests and her tastes to be just as noble and just as respectable as male interests and pursuits. In fact, Tolkien, as much as he loved talking about the wildwood, Tolkien was a gardener himself who gardened throughout his life. He was probably more of an Entwife than he was an Ent. And the role and importance of the Entwives is not undermined within the context of the story. After all, they were the ones who taught men and hobbits agriculture, how to tame the wild world, and how to be a good steward of it. And yet, Tolkien also recognized that the perspective of the Ents was respectable, and that sometimes when you had a couple where both of them have separate and differing interests, those things can tear that couple apart. Both Middle-earth and our own world are undeniably imperfect. Even for someone like the Ents and the appropriately named Entwives, created to be perfect for each other, there is division. And yet, Tolkien believed that it wouldn't be like this forever. There might very well be a place, down the West Road, beyond the world that we know, where these wounds could be healed. In a letter he wrote, "I think it is plain that there would be for Ents no reunion in history, but Ents and their wives, being rational creatures, would find some earthly paradise until the end of this world, beyond which the wisdom neither of elves nor Ents could see." This broken marriage is tragic, but Tolkien believed that tragedies like this would not be forever. After all, the Ents are only one side of the coin of human love, and this kind of tragedy, this separation, can also coincide with a kind of love that is bone deep and lifelong. In a poem to Edith, Tolkien once compared them to trees. "Lo, young we are, and yet have stood like planted hearts in the great sun of love so long, as two fair trees in woodland or in open dale stand utterly entwined, and breathe the airs and suck the very light together, that we have become as one, deep-rooted in the soil of life, and tangled in the sweet growth." Perhaps that is the secret to everlasting love, that growth. These trees are separate. They are separate entities, they are their own beings, but they are rooted in the same soil, and they are growing towards the same light. They have become so entangled in this sweet, sweet growth that no division, no separate desires or different wishes could ever truly tear them apart. So long as they keep growing together, they will be together, in this world and the next. The loss of the Entwives is truly tragic. It's a mystery that's easily understood and easily explained, but very hard to accept. You don't really want them to be dead, even if Tolkien outrightly says that they probably are. It's a really hard pill to swallow that some differences could truly be so deeply irreconcilable. The Ents and the Entwives are a key part of building up Tolkien's arguments, not just about what relationships could be or should be, but also how they so often are. And despite that being a tragic and terrible and terrifying thing, Tolkien makes it clear that the truest kind of love will always find its way back together again. I would be so interested in hearing what you guys have to say about the Entwives in the comments. They're such a small part of the overall story, and the movies more or less laugh them off entirely, but there's really a lot of depth there. They're such interesting characters, and after doing the research for writing this video, I was kind of left wondering if I might not be like a hobbit after all. Maybe I'm more of an Entwife. But I guess that means I die, so I probably shouldn't identify as that. If you want to check out that essay by John Rateliff, that is linked with my other sources in the comments, as well as this essay, which, hang on, I need to read the title, Nicole Duplessis's To Grow Together or To Grow Apart. That's where I got a lot of the arguments for this video from, so go ahead and check that out. That is also in my sources down below. Now, do be warned that there will not be any new videos posted on this channel for the next 2 weeks. I am not dead, I promise. I'm just at the Brandywine Festival this week, as of this video posting, and the week after that, frankly, I need to get you guys a Halloween video made. I've been pushing very hard to get Beowulf and Brandywine out there on top of everything else, so these 2 weeks are going to be a very nice break, and I'm very excited to come back with a Halloween video, I believe on actual Halloween. So be sure to subscribe if you want to stick around, and consider joining my Patreon, where I will be more present and I will be posting some bonus content, I'm pretty sure. So go ahead and check that out, it is linked in the description. Thank you so much for joining me this week and every week, and I hope that you have a very happy, hobbity day.